What makes a king truly powerful? Is it strength, intelligence, or the ability to destroy any threat without hesitation? In the wild, only 1 in 8 male lions survives to adulthood, and the few that do still face an even greater challenge, conquering and maintaining a territory. It is estimated that only 10% of male lions who gain a pride rule for more than 4 years before being replaced. SEKEKAMA's story proves that being king isn't just about power, but survival. In the wild heart of Botswana, he built a dynasty that defied the natural cycles of the savannah, crushing rivals and even resisting his own sons. But every empire has a price, and SEKEKAMA paid his in blood. What if I told you that the strongest lion in Africa ruled with so much power that even his own sons tried to destroy him? Do you think SEKEKAMA was a wise leader or a brutal tyrant? Over the years, SEKEKAMA faced betrayals, battles, and enemies that grew within his own family. This pattern has been documented in several studies on dominant lions. A study published in the journal Nature Communications shows that about 70% of male lions are eventually expelled by their own sons or close relatives, making the succession of power an inevitable battle. But what led him to conquer and then lose everything? The answer will surprise you. Today you will discover the real story behind the lion who dominated the Okavango Delta, survived attacks, crushed rivals, and redefined the rules of the game in the African jungle. And by the end of this video, you will understand what it truly means to be a king, and what happens when the throne begins to crumble. In the heart of the Okavango Delta, where survival demands more than strength, a young lion named SEKEKAMA emerged from the shadows to claim his place at the top. Botswana had seen many kings, but few with the intelligence and brutality that he would demonstrate. From an early age, he learned that power wasn't given, it was taken. Each step, each scar, molded a leader who would defy all odds. With a roar that echoed through the savannas, he didn't just survive, he dominated. The lion without a pride became a legend even before he was a king. Conquering territory in Botswana wasn't for everyone. SEKEKAMA knew that only the most cunning and ruthless could create a true dynasty. Studies on wild lions conducted in the Okavango Delta show that most males who take over a territory eliminate the former leader's cubs to ensure the continuation of their own legacy. This behavior, called reproductive infanticide, increases the chances of females going into heat faster, and SEKEKAMA knew how to use this strategy to his advantage. He learned the art of war by observing the weaknesses of his adversaries. The rivers of the Okavango Delta were his trenches, the forests his hiding place. He attacked at the right time without hesitation. The game of succession began even before his crown was recognized. Building an empire is no small feat. SEKEKAMA's journey was marked by relentless ambition and strategic brilliance. His vision extended beyond mere survival. He sought to create a legacy that would stand the test of time. Around him, a pack of strong lions began to form, warriors who saw in SEKEKAMA a leader like no other. He wasn't just a king, he was a strategist. Unlike many, he didn't let arrogance get the better of him. Each battle won was just a stepping stone to something bigger. With every victory, with every new territory conquered, his influence grew. The savannah knew his name. Rival lions began to whisper about his rise. But a king can never rest. There are always watchful eyes, ready for betrayal. The blood of the weak became the foundation of his empire. As documented in studies on lions in the Okavango Delta, dominant leaders often kill cubs of rival coalitions to ensure that only their lineage thrives. This behavior, known as reproductive infanticide, makes the females go into heat faster and strengthens a leader's dominance. SEKEKAMA's reign spread through the territory like wildfire. With sharp claws and a calculating mind, he created an empire like no other. His name became synonymous with respect and fear. But in the wild, the greater the power, the greater the threat. SEKEKAMA knew that his rise did not go unnoticed, and that great challenges were yet to come. Even at his peak, the king was never satisfied. The next generation of lions was already beginning to grow within his own kingdom. Princes, sons of his lineage, looked at their father with admiration and ambition. In the wild, inheritance is never guaranteed, and the past had already shown that the greatest betrayal can come from within. The winds of rivalry were already blowing, announcing that the fight for the throne was far from over. Because in the kingdom of lions, being king is one thing, staying king is another story. SEKEKAMA's reign wasn't just made of glorious conquests, it was sustained by blood and fear. No king rules without enemies, and he knew that better than anyone. In the heart of the Okavango Delta, his territory grew, but along with it grew the list of rivals. Exiled lions, renegade princes, old enemies. They all lurked, waiting for an opening, a moment of weakness. But SEKEKAMA wasn't an ordinary king. He saw treachery where others saw loyalty, and before an enemy attacked, he had already sharpened his claws. Each season brought new challenges. The drought tightened, the buffalo migrated, and with that the territory became more vulnerable. It was then that the northern lions dared to challenge SEKEKAMA. They weren't simple opponents. They were led by a lion as brutal as he was. Serkote, a cunning warrior who had been waiting for his chance for years. The battle between the two became a legend, with roars echoing across the plains and the earth trembling under the fury of the giants. But SEKEKAMA couldn't fall. Not now. He fought with the ferocity of a true king and won. Serkote retreated, but the rivalry wasn't over. This war would have new chapters, the shadows of betrayal. But not every enemy came from the outside. Within his own pride, the shadows of betrayal were spreading. SEKEKAMA had raised his sons to be strong, but he didn't expect their ambition to grow along with them. In the animal kingdom, 70% of young male lions are kicked out of their groups by their own fathers or uncles before they grow up. For lions, survival comes before family, and SEKEKAMA's 3 sons were ready to challenge his rule. They wanted more food, more land, more power, and when the thirst for power takes over, loyalty disappears. That's when the plotting began. At first there were small challenges, angry stares, subtle acts of disobedience, staying away during hunts. Then came the whispers at night, the secret meetings between the princes and other lions in the pride. Then the unthinkable happened. One of SEKEKAMA's sons tried to attack him. The jungle fell silent. No lion had ever challenged the king like that. And SEKEKAMA did what needed to be done. With unbelievable fury, he punished the betrayal. The disgraced prince was expelled, banished forever from the kingdom that could have one day been his. But when you cut off one head, 2 more grow back. Treachery never dies. It hides, waiting for the right moment. SEKEKAMA had won battles, but the war for his throne was just beginning. He knew enemies were everywhere, even within his own bloodline. The rivalry between father and sons was just starting to simmer, and the greatest test of his leadership was yet to come. Because on the savannah, the king who doesn't get rid of his traitors will be gotten rid of by them. The Okavango Delta is no paradise for the weak. There, survival depends not only on strength, but on intelligence and adaptation. SEKEKAMA knew this better than anyone. The waters would come and go, transforming dry lands into swamps and then into deserts. Life was never stable. A king who doesn't adapt to the land is doomed to disappear. And SEKEKAMA wasn't about to lose anything. During the dry season, prey disappeared. The buffalo migrated south, the zebras vanished over the horizon, and even the hippos sought refuge in deeper waters. The lions of the SEKEKAMA dynasty were forced to roam farther, to invade dangerous territories, to fight against desperate hyenas and hungry crocodiles. The young lions learned quickly, you either adapt or you die. For a king, scarcity was never an excuse. He needed to feed his pride. A leader doesn't complain about the drought, he survives it. But the drought wasn't the only challenge. In the rainy season, another nightmare began. The delta became a maze of water and mud, separating SEKEKAMA's kingdom into floating islands. Predators were forced to swim, fight against strong currents, and face unexpected ambushes. Many times SEKEKAMA saw her cubs being swept away by the turbulent waters. Forced to fight against giant crocodiles, their loyalty wasn't a choice. If one lion didn't protect the other, the family would die. These were the harsh conditions where SEKEKAMA trained his successors. If you wanted to be king, you couldn't just inherit the throne, you had to survive it. SEKEKAMA himself had escaped death countless times. Ambushed by angry buffalo, attacked by a group of exiled lions, surrounded by hyenas in the middle of a storm. But he always persevered. Because in the savannah, only those willing to face death have the right to rule. The lions of his dynasty grew up under these trials. Each season, SEKEKAMA watched to see which of his children truly had the instinct to lead. Who hesitated in front of a river full of crocodiles? Who backed down when facing a furious elephant? Who collapsed from exhaustion before the hunt was over? SEKEKAMA wasn't just training warriors, he was selecting heirs. But this harsh method had a price. Not all of his children accepted these rules. Some rebelled, others ran away, and some simply decided that instead of proving their strength, they could just take the throne. And so conflict within the family became unavoidable. The seeds of rebellion. For years, SEKEKAMA built an unbreakable dynasty. But ironically, the biggest threat to his throne didn't come from faraway rivals, but from within his own family. His sons, raised under his relentless command, grew up strong, fearless, and ambitious. SEKEKAMA's power was absolute, but there was something not even he could prevent. A renegade prince's hunger to take what wasn't given to him. Among SEKEKAMA's many children, 3 stood out. They were formidable warriors, loyal to their father, or so he thought. They had learned everything about strategy, survival, and leadership directly from the king. But instead of following his orders, they started to question them. They saw SEKEKAMA getting older, his strength fading, his scars multiplying. And in the jungle, a king who starts to weaken is a king who starts to lose. Rivalry within the family turned into betrayal. The 3 outcast princes, once SEKEKAMA's natural successors, turned against him, plotting a coup. They believed the dynasty needed fresh blood, a new king who would challenge the old ways. But SEKEKAMA wasn't a king ready to step down. The betrayal wasn't just a challenge to his power, it was a declaration of war. Blood was spilled, and new rivals appeared, each one fiercer than the last, in a fight for power that seemed to have no end. The Okavango Delta became a brutal battleground. Lions that once hunted together now attacked each other without mercy. The hyenas, always lurking, were waiting for the dynasty to crumble so they could steal whatever was left. SEKEKAMA knew that if he didn't crush the rebellion, his entire lineage was at risk of being wiped out. But deep down, he also knew he wasn't just facing rivals, he was facing his own sons. Conflict was unavoidable. The king tried for a time to control the rebellious princes, to bring them back to order. But they had already crossed the line. Power was so close they could feel it, and they weren't going to give up. SEKEKAMA then made a cruel decision. Any lion who rose up against him would no longer be his son. And in the law of the savannah, an exiled lion no longer has the right to the pride's protection. From that moment on, it was kill or be killed. And so, royal blood was spilled by its own kin. The empire that SEKEKAMA spent years building now trembled with a war within its own walls. But as the king fought against the sons he once believed were his successors, another lion appeared on the horizon. A challenger with no blood ties to the dynasty, but with the same thirst for power. While SEKEKAMA waged battles within his own dynasty, a new name began to echo in the Okavango Delta. He wasn't part of the royal pride, but he grew like a shadow on the savannah, watching, studying, waiting for the right moment. His name? SEKEKAMA, a young, agile and calculating lion who didn't need a king's inheritance to conquer his own empire. SEKEKAMA wasn't born into the luxury of a dynasty. He survived on the fringes of power, learning through hardship. He grew up far from the privileges of SEKEKAMA's princes, but he learned to be patient. He saw firsthand how survival depended on strategy and brute force, but above all, intelligence. While SEKEKAMA's sons fought amongst themselves, SEKEKAMA saw weakness spreading and knew the king's time was running out. The rivalry between the renegade princes and SEKEKAMA opened a door that SEKEKAMA didn't hesitate to walk through. He began to gather allies, lions without territory, exiles, opportunists. Unlike SEKEKAMA's other challengers who tried to seize the throne by force, SEKEKAMA infiltrated the shadows, corrupting the heart of the kingdom before attacking. By the time the king finally noticed the enemy growing in the north, it was too late. The Okavango Delta, once the center of SEKEKAMA's empire, was now divided. On one side, a wounded king worn down by betrayals and age. On the other, a young leader who carried the energy and ambition of a new era. The duel between past and future was inevitable. Sekote didn't just want to defeat SEKEKAMA. He wanted to rewrite the rules of the jungle. But what made Sekote different from the renegade princes? He wasn't acting out of revenge or ego. For him, SEKEKAMA wasn't just a king who needed to be overthrown, but an entire system that needed to be destroyed. He understood that the throne wasn't enough if the kingdom was still shaped by the legacy of the old monarch. If Sekote won, SEKEKAMA's dynasty wouldn't just fall, it would be erased from history. And so the winds of change blew over Botswana. SEKEKAMA's fight to keep his crown was no longer just against his sons or against the dangers of the savannah. Now he faced something bigger, time itself, which always takes its toll. And as he prepared for one last showdown, Sekote already envisioned the future, and it didn't include the old king. The sun was setting over the Okavango Delta, and with it, SEKEKAMA's reign was reaching its final chapter. Documentaries like National Geographic's Kingdom of the Wild show that dominant male lions rarely lead a pride past the age of 12. Time doesn't forgive even the most powerful kings, and SEKEKAMA was beginning to feel the weight of his years. The lion who once ruled with an iron fist, who crushed rivals and survived betrayals, now saw his empire crumbling. Time, his greatest enemy, was exacting the price that not even a king could avoid. The strength that had kept him at the top for years was beginning to fail. But SEKEKAMA wasn't a king who accepted defeat quietly. Sekote had advanced with his calculated attack, tearing down the foundations of the dynasty even before the final confrontation. SEKEKAMA's allies, once loyal and unquestioning, were now wondering if it was worth dying for an aging king. Even the renegade princes, who once tried to usurp their father's throne, now watched from afar, waiting to see what fate the Okavango Delta held for their former monarch. But SEKEKAMA wasn't just any lion. His name hadn't become a legend by chance. Even in his final days of reign, he still carried the presence of a true king. The Botswana Delta had seen many leaders fall, but none fought with such fury until the very end. He knew that every battle fought now wasn't just for power, but for the memory of his dynasty, for everything he had built, for his legacy. The clash between the two lions was more than a simple territorial dispute. It was a clash of generations, of philosophies, of different times. SEKEKAMA represented the old order, where the throne was won by force and maintained by imposition. Sekote, on the other hand, brought calculated chaos, inevitable change, the new that always replaces the old. The duel between the two wasn't just physical, but a battle of ideas that would echo for years in the savannah. When the final confrontation happened, it wasn't a glorious clash between two titans at their peak. It was brutal, drawn out, marked by heavy blows and labored breathing. SEKEKAMA fought like a king, but fate had already sealed his end. Studies on lion coalitions show that most dominant males lose their territory between the ages of 10 and 12, when their strength begins to decline. The roar that once echoed for 30 miles across the savannah now became just a memory of the king's golden age. Sekote didn't just win, he ensured that SEKEKAMA would be remembered only as a king of the past. And so the reign of Africa's strongest lion came to an end. But the jungle never sleeps. The question that remained was, how long would Sekote keep his crown before the wheel of fate turned again? SEKEKAMA's story isn't just about one lion, but about the relentless cycle of power. One day you're on top. You have the world at your feet, but the next moment the winds change, and those who were by your side now want your crown. The jungle shows no mercy, and the Okavango Delta teaches us a brutal lesson. There's no throne that lasts forever. But now I ask you, what would you do if you were in SEKEKAMA's place? Would you have made different decisions? Or would you accept that in the game of power, even the strongest must fall one day? Is there a way to avoid betrayal? Or is it that, just like in nature, rivalry and succession are inevitable? Did this story make you think? Then tell me in the comments, who do you think was the greatest lion in the history of the Okavango? Did SEKEKAMA deserve this end, or did his brutality seal his fate? I want to know your opinion. And if you want to keep diving into stories like this, subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications, because here we bring you the behind the scenes of legends, the details that no one tells you, and the truths that make you see the world in a new way. See you in the next video.